Jolly good. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this cabinet meeting, 16th of April 2024. We regret we've got a problem with the microphones, which means that the normal system is not working. We're extremely grateful to the Democratic Services Manager who's mocked up and improvised. We've got this one here, and then there's a roving one coming around. It'll take a few moments to get across to you, but that does mean something that we thought we couldn't do earlier. We are still able to stream the meeting in the normal way. We don't have any apologies for absence, I don't think. No, that's good. Can I ask if any cabinet member has any declaration of interest for any item that's on this evening's agenda, please? No, all clear. Thank you. We move then to minutes, and we have our minutes of our last meeting, which was the 12th of March. Can I ask if any member has any suggestion, alteration, amendments, etc.? No. Propose, is that agreed? Thank you. That's great. No particular chair's announcements, and I've not been notified of any urgent business this evening. Other than to note, we have got a member of the public speaking. We've got Sally Keeble, but you're right, speaking on item 8. I think we just bring you in at item 8, Sally, rather than at this point. If that's okay with you. Good. In which case, that takes us on to item 6. This is our first main report. This is the carer strategy. Matt Golby, the cabinet member, will introduce this to us in a moment, following which we have 3 councillors ready to speak in this order. We have Councillor Rosie Humphries, Councillor Emma Roberts, and then Councillor Wendy Randall. So I think this is going to be a double act with Sally and Matt. Is that right? So
that's the last one.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Yes, of course it is. Of course it is. I'll hand over to you then, Matt. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Is that okay with the microphone? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so first off, I just want to recognise the brilliant work of carers across the whole of West Northamptonshire. And in the 2021 census, there were nearly 32,000 West Northamptonshire residents of all ages, including children, that identified themselves as carers. However, we are only aware of a third of those carers because people do not know that support is available. This carer strategy sets out our strategic direction over the next 5 years to address this gap and identify more people for support. The Care Act 2014 sets out a statutory duty for local authorities towards unpaid carers, and unpaid carers are defined as a person that provides unpaid support to a partner, family member, friend or neighbour who is ill, struggling or disabled and could not manage without this help. This is a distinct form of care worker that is paid. Sorry, this is distinct from a care worker that is paid to support people. So engagement events took place in all 9 of our local area partnerships of West Northamptonshire during the autumn, and I attended a number of them. Some amazing contributions from carers and challenges made to us, and that are captured, and you can see them in the feedback from the event at the tables at 8.1 of the covering report. And it talks about as to what works well, what doesn't work well, and suggestions from the carers as to what could be done to improve support for carers. Officers carried out their own self-assessment against our statutory duties and recruited carers in the engagement events as experts by experience, and they're referenced a number of times throughout the report and the strategy. Those carers reviewed this information and chose the priorities for this strategy. So this strategy is written by carers for carers, and that's the aim. To show that this is a strategy is having a positive effect, our carer by experts by experience group asked for an outcomes framework for carers to be developed. The strategy includes I statements selected by carers to hold us to account and patient-reported outcomes measures that will show if the burden of care is reduced by introducing this strategy and the quality of life for carers improves. And we talk about in the strategy about points to review the strategy and make changes in accordance to what people actually think the success of the strategy is. I wanted also to reference the powerful statement in the foreword by Pat Marshall, a care expert by experience and co-producer of this strategy. And in her opening line, she puts that being defined by one word is a big responsibility that can either make or break our universe, but is one that is taken for granted. And to me, that resonated really well and gets to the nub of what we're trying to achieve with this strategy. So I think this is an excellent piece of work that should go a long way in helping people like Pat. And the recommendation today is that Cabinet approve the 30-day carer strategy consultation. So I'm happy to recommend that to Cabinet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for the introduction there, Matt. That's great. Let's move to our speakers. First that we have then is Councillor Humphreys. Rosie, over to you. We'll pass the microphone down to the table there, so it's thank you.
Good evening. Thank you. Councillor Golby in his foreword to the strategy refers to caring as a truly selfless role. While this may be true, unfortunately, such relentless unselfishness is making carers overall in West Northants feel tired, depressed and stressed, as reported in the National Carer Survey in the report before the strategy. From what I understand about caring through talking to carers and through the work of the Task and Finish panel on the support for unpaid carers in West Northants, is that carers aren't interested in being heroes, they just want to be supported and valued for what they do. What support the council offers has real consequences for their health and well-being and general ability to cope. It's going to be a huge undertaking to identify some of the 22,000 carers in West Northants yet to be offered support who are not known carers. I hope that the funding secured for identifying them will be adequate for the task. By way of reminder, the Task and Finish panel was set up following a Liberal Democrat motion last June, which proposed an assessment of the support for unpaid carers in West Northants. The scrutiny work is ongoing and the panel will be submitting comments on the strategy. In the interim, I would like to thank the officers and 60 experts by experience who contributed to the content of the strategy and its comprehensive vision. I quite agree with Councillor Golby, it's a really excellent piece of work. Nationally, the value of unpaid care is estimated to be the equivalent of a second NHS, saving an annual £162 billion. In Northants, this is estimated to be 1.3 billion. This saving is not, of course, translated into a generous benefit in recognition of the saving to the state. Carers allowance is the lowest benefit of its kind. It was concerning to discover when I attended one of Northampton carers' carer cafes that a lot of carers were not aware that personal independence payment is not a means-tested benefit, not dependent on income and savings. The proposal of a peripatetic one-stop shop could help address this issue. I would ask Councillor Golby to review whether the anti-poverty strategy should have a particular focus on the financial pressures faced by carers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rosie. Matt, did you want to come back on any of the points raised or?
I don't mind.
Actually, I tell you what, given the microphone relay thing, perhaps we'll catch up at the end, shall we? Sorry, yes, of course, very good point. So we'll bring in, thank you again, Rosie, we'll bring in our next speaker, which is Councillor Roberts. Emma, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. I think this carer strategy is a really ambitious strategy. The co-production team and the reference to co-production within the document is the best I've seen so far and is in stark contrast to item 8 on the agenda. So I'll just put that out there now. I'd like to see more of the how in the strategy. There isn't a lot of that, and that's, I think, going to be problematic to getting the public's buy-in into the detail. And in particular, I thought that was missing on the clearly identified need for action around respite care. I think the how we deliver that is going to be crucial because it's the voice of burden on a carer was really felt throughout the report. There's quite a lot of reference to lapse in the report, and at 5.9 in the actual cabinet report, not the strategy itself, The reference to lapse and a peripatetic survey, lapse in their infancy at this present moment in time may not be in a good position to actually deliver that service. And if the one-stop shop obviously moves to One Angel Square from the Guildhall, we've got all the discussions around equality that we've already debated in respect of that. So I didn't think that was particularly helpful comment within the report. I also felt that the definition of the LAP needs to really be detailed when we reference the LAP taking on parts of this strategy, because I sit on the LAP. Some of the members, council members who also sit on the LAP don't attend the meeting. So are they going to be part of delivering that peripatetic process or not? Or do we actually mean the services that already exist within the LAP, which is what I think we do? But that's not detailed, and I think that really causes us a problem with delivery of the strategy. I wanted to say that I thought the carer self-assessment that we did was an absolutely incredibly reflective and honest piece of work, and the staff that delivered that didn't just accept that things weren't quite right, they attempted to address where it went wrong. So I think that's really positive and they should be commended for that. And again, the co-production point, I think I can't emphasize that enough. It feels like we're going to consultation having already co-produced something with people. So I think that's crucial. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Emma. And our next speaker is Councillor Randall. Wendy, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. There was a few things in there that I have got concerns over. So young carers, I don't know how you're going to identify those. Speaking to heads of schools, you know, they do have pupils missing from schools that their parents may phone in to say they're not well, but it's in fact because the parents want them to stay at home because they don't want to be left alone and they're missing out on their education. So it's, to me, it's how you go about identifying those people. So, you know, I don't know how you're going to work with parish and town councils. I don't think there was too much detail in them. And obviously, you know, they know, you know, where a lot of those people are identified. Obviously, it was really distressing, and we know that, you know, to hear that carers are going without food, you know, they're giving up their jobs. I've spoke to quite a few carers and said, you know, what is it that you want? And mainly it's respite. And obviously respite now is being, I was talking to a lady today and she gets 6 weeks respite, but where her son goes, the prices have increased. So she's now worried that she's not going to get her 6 weeks respite because it's not going to be funded within the amount that's allocated to her. It's all very unclear and, you know, she's very upset about that. And you know, it's just how we push that out there. When I set up the diabetic support group in Daventry, it was for Daventry and District. It's how we pushed out that information, and we actually got GPs on board to put out information within prescriptions, because a lot of people cared for do have a prescription. So that was an easy way of getting information out there. A lot of people don't search on the internet. You know, so I think there is a lot of useful way that you can capture people, but just use the people out there, you know, like the schools and parish and all those organisations as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Ken, you're not ready to speak, but were you looking to chip in?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. Just one thing, actually, I've read through the report and it really is a very good piece of work. And also the implications are quite dramatic when it comes to it. But one thing that does concern me is 7.11. There are no new resources or financial implications arising from this strategy. From a 5-year perspective, you know, how can we actually achieve these, what it says in this particular report, when there isn't any further financial implications?
Yes, that's a good point. Well made. Thank you, Ken. Thank you. So let's hand back to Matt then, perhaps to field some of those points. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Here we go. Yeah, well, thank you for the comments and for the general acknowledgement that this is a very good piece of work. Councillor Humphreys mentioned the financial impact and the anti-poverty strategy, and I think that is a valid point. And I did make a point of getting that referenced in the report, but it is something that we can bring up. We've actually got an anti-poverty oversight group tomorrow, so we can say off the back of the comments today, it would be good to make a reference and have a discussion about the financial impact on carers and what that means for us with the anti-poverty strategy. I agree with Councillor Roberts' point around the how. I think there's a lot of the what in here, and that's one of my challenges. So I know when we bring this back after the consultation, we need a delivery plan about how we're going to make the how happen. So that's a fair point. I do think also there's perhaps a role for scrutiny or a bit further down the line to say, have a look at this and say, well, how's it going and what's working well and what can be changed. And we have got that expert by experience group set up that can be a touch point as we implement the strategy all the way through. So I think there is room to keep changing it if we need to and make it better. There's the lap question from Emma. I think you answered it yourself in the end there, that it is around the teams that are being located in the laps to roll out the strategy, not just for the people that attend the meetings, I guess. The co-production point is positive, agreed, and I know an extra effort was made with this to make sure it was co-produced in a positive way. Wendy's points around how we get the message out, I think that's one of the challenges. And again, I think some of the points raised by you guys this evening, we can make sure we feed those into the consultation, because that's the point of bringing it here today. So I welcome the messages. I think Stuart was going to talk about just reference the respite point and Ken's final point around resources, if that's okay. Stuart.
Thank you. Just really quickly on the young carers point, Wendy, that was the same point I identified when I saw this in draft form. When you think about health inequalities, our young carers have some of the highest health inequalities experienced across our patch. So we have to go really forward to identify who they are to support them. On the respite side of things, the position around respite is, from a county council perspective, the local authority's provision was always situated in the north of the authority, which meant when we had the unitary split, we had to move to a position whereby we gave people direct payments in order to purchase their respite individually, as Councillor Randall has alluded to. That's the process in place. In relation to that individual case, if you send me the details, I'll have a look at it. Behind the scenes, we are currently developing a business case around the development of a council-led respite provision. In order to establish that business case, we're going line by line through the direct payment awards that we have to carers to identify the totality of money that we spend around direct payments. The joys of choice and control and promoting people's independence gives people a level of flexibility and fluidity around this. Subject to that stacking up, that will enable us to take forward a level of dedicated provision locally, which will allow us to better enable carers to book in respite on a regular basis. In relation to the question pertaining to the financial implications of this, we have to understand that as we move forward and identify more carers, there may be a business case that emerges that allows us to demonstrate the benefit that we would get by increasing the support to carers, thus reducing carer breakdown. Where there is a real opportunity is around the integrated commissioning pertaining to carer support services. For example, at the moment, the Integrated Care Board, NHFT, NGH and the council all separately commission a range of voluntary sector organisations to deliver carer support services. Through our Better Care Fund now, we have agreed that the local authority is going to be the lead commissioner in that space. That will allow us to ensure that that money is made best use of and that we don't have duplication within the area. Thank you.
Jolly good. Thank you. Thank you, Stuart. Any other comments, questions from members of the Cabinet on this one? No, okay, thank you. As normal, the recommendations are at section 3. Can I just ask you to signal your agreement? Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much indeed. And that takes us on to item 7. This one is with Phil. It's the proposed drainage bylaws for flood risk management. After Phil has made an introduction, we now have 4 speakers in this order: Councillor Jonathan Harris, Councillor Keith Holland-Delamere, Councillor Wendy Randall, and Councillor Emma Roberts. So Phil, over to you for the introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Land drainage bylaws. Flooding, as you know, Mr. Chairman, is a serious issue, disrupting lives and businesses and striking erratically. It can take years for recovery from flooding, affecting people's lives, physical and mental health, and livelihoods. It is therefore important to do all that we can to minimise the risks and help people recover when flooding does in fact occur. There are many things the council already does, both traditional and innovative, to mitigate flood risk. This includes the RAIN. For those who don't know, it's Resilience and Innovation in Northamptonshire project, which we are proud to host. This helps by testing new approaches, including improved land management to slow water entering the watercourses and rivers, all the way to flood wardens helping local communities when a flood is coming. Whilst the RAIN project only works in one catchment area in West Northants, that's the Wootton Brook, the learning that we gain from that project will be applied more widely. West Northants Council is both the Land Drainage Authority and lead local flood authority, and one of the benefits of being a unitary council is that both of these functions are in one place, allowing an integrated approach to flood risk to be taken. Under both sets of powers, the council can make land drainage bylaws, and these are designed to help better manage watercourses to reduce flood risk. As the climate continues to change more frequently, erratic and intense rainfall is likely. This makes reducing flood risk even more important right across West Northants, including places which haven't experienced flooding in the past. Therefore, we are proposing to make bylaws which govern all watercourses in West Northamptonshire, except main rivers where the Environment Agency has its own bylaws, and a few in the very south of the area that are managed by the Buckingham and River Ouse Inland Drainage Board, part of the Bedford Group of Drainage Boards. The bylaws, Mr. Chairman, are based on the standard set issued by DEFRA, with the addition of one bylaw used by the Bedford Group, which they have found useful and we feel will find useful as well. The introduction and establishment of bylaws is a lengthy process, and that is set out in the report. To get to the point of having the bylaws in force is a long process. This report is the first step in the process, and if Cabinet approves, then we will proceed to consultation. At the end of the day, it will be the council, full council, that will decide the bylaws or whether to apply them. If made, the bylaws would be applied proportionately, depending on risk. Summing up, Mr. Chairman, the bylaws would help the council reduce the risk people and businesses face from flooding. The damage flooding causes means we should take this step, so I'm pleased to move the recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Phil. Let's go to our speakers now. And first is Jonathan Harris. Councillor Harris, welcome, Jonathan. Oh, beg your pardon. Yep. No, that's the next item.
Thank you. Evening, councillors. I hope you can hear this okay. Of course, this is to be welcomed in its current format, but I do have some concerns around it, and I'll just explain my concerns around it. Of course, we want to reduce flood risk, and it sets out very clearly in 1.4 other important ambitions: improving water quality, improving biodiversity, and I think we must make sure we remember those factors as well as the flood risk reduction. The main concern is in section 6.3, it clearly says, due to current resource and budgetary constraints, there are no plans at present to undertake routine regular inspections of ordinary watercourses within West North Hants. Now, I'm concerned about that because from a lead local flood authority point of view, with a planning context on, having subbed for my colleague recently at a couple of strategic planning meetings, I know that there are challenges in resource and challenges in timelines to get agreement to new developments, particularly sustainable urban extensions, and the input from the lead local flood authority. So my concern is, I know that they're stretched in that area, and whilst putting these bylaws in place, of course, makes sense when you look at them as writ, without the resource, I don't know exactly what they're going to do fundamentally. We seem to be saying, we'll have these bylaws, we'll have these laws, but effectively we're telling people we've got a set of rules that potentially we either won't enforce or can't enforce. So I think that's something we really need to seriously think about. I can't see how it will make a difference unless there are routine inspections, and it very clearly says there won't be any routine inspections. So it feels a little bit like if it comes in our direction and we are made aware of issues, pollution, spillages, we'll do something about it. If we don't, then maybe we can't, or maybe we won't. And I just don't think that's acceptable or good enough. I understand the resource issue, of course, but it just doesn't feel to me like it's got enough teeth to do what it needs to do. If my understanding is correct, ordinary watercourses means any river, stream, brook, ditch, drain, culvert, pipe, and any other passage through which water may flow, which is not a main river. So it excludes main rivers, as you mentioned. That's left to the Environment Agency, who we know are also struggling to cope with many issues also. And there are plenty of examples of pollution in those smaller rivers, streams, brooks, tributaries that have grown hugely, 300% in some instances, places like the Brampton branch. And I really want to know what we're going to do about that as well, because those issues feed ultimately into the larger rivers. But if we're putting bylaws in place, then please can we make sure we've got some teeth to actually do something about it? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. And yes, welcome, Keith, Councillor Holland-Ellermere.
I too share the concerns of Jonathan Harris about resourcing. My ward lies north of Billing Aquadrome, and I'm aware of various issues with drainage coming through Talavera and Billing and Wretch Farm ward into that river valley, and the ways in which, through the fact that we haven't maintained the watercourses that we own in our area, we are causing problems further down the valley. I'm aware of also blockages that keep on happening on my community in Rectory Farm, where we have got real drainage problems, where we have failed to maintain our land to make sure that we are keeping the water further up instead of just dumping it further down the valley. So I think there's so of course I recognise it's just the bylaws, which, yep, they're important, but we really do seriously need to look at how our role in how we have that wider sense of the ecosystem and the drainage across the whole of the area, in particular north of Billing Aquadrome. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Keith. Next we have Councillor Randall. Wendy.
Thank you. When we put bylaws in place, but then we've got no one to enforce it, to me, that's just like a tick box exercise. I've seen this many times before when we've introduced bylaws in different councils, and that's exactly what it becomes. So, you know, we know that there are issues, They're not being looked at, they're not being maintained, they're not being monitored. And if we're expecting the general public to report that, what sort of signage are we putting in place to direct them in the right place to report it, and to whom and where? But to me, you know, if we're not going to have anybody enforcing it, it's just, well, it is, that's all it is, just a tick box exercise, just to say, this is what we've got in place. So I'm disappointed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. And then Councillor Roberts. Emma.
Thank you, Chair. I think the council should, or the cabinet, sorry, should support the recommendation to create the bylaws. But just a couple of questions. There's a point at 5.3 where it says, upon successful recruitment of the council's flood and water team, it's intended that this service will be brought back in-house. That refers to the service that the Bedford Group of Drainage Boards does for us at the moment. So when is the council's flood and water team actually going to be functioning fully, so that we can stop referring to the lead local flood authority, I suppose, as a separate legal entity to us, because we are the lead local flood authority. And I think that's evident throughout the report. I'd also like to understand how these bylaws deal with bullet point 4 of 1.4 of the Cabinet report, which states that it will ensure drainage infrastructure will be maintained and adapted over time. I don't understand how these bylaws do that at all. So when we take this out to people, how can we either remove that if it doesn't, or make it clear how it's going to deal with that? Because I don't see how the bylaws deal with the drainage infrastructure at all. And then I just wanted to point out a couple of issues that I'm experiencing that maybe these bylaws might help with, or maybe the cabinet member or the director might be able to help with too. So outside Asda in Farcott and London Road, permanently filled with water, permanently. It gets cleaned. We get told the drains are fine. It gets filled with water. In May 2018, the Borough Council obviously experienced significant damage as a result of flooding in the area, and the lead local flood authority reports that were released on the floods in Farcott and showed that that system there could not cope with the water. We've subsequently installed some capture tanks. Stuart, I know that's not the right word, but they're capturing the silt, and they were installed in March 24, and this week they were inspected and they are full to the brim. So they are not cope. I mean, a 2-month lifespan on the capturing tank just can't be appropriate. Plea, I've asked what's our long-term solutions for this area, but I haven't had any clear definition on that other than we'll clean it out and we'll see what happens next. So plea, I don't think these bylaws would help me there either, because that's our responsibility, not the people that the bylaws are aimed at, but a plea for help. Secondly, the boat in the canal at Southbridge. The Environment Agency said they'd remove it. They haven't. We said we can't do anything about it. There's a reference to vessels or sunken vessels in the bylaws. That would get dealt with as part of these bylaws, would it? I'm not clear it would, because the Environment Agency has responsibility at the moment at that particular location. So if you can help me get that boat out of the water, I'd much appreciate it. But we have to go out to consultation on this. We have to have stronger bylaws. I echo my colleagues' concerns with regards to enforcement. Thank you, Chair.
Very good. Thank you, Emma. A few points there, Phil or Stuart. Did you want to sweep up and answer any of those queries, or? No. I think that's the next item. Sally's here for item 8. Parks Development. Yes, you're okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, first of all, to everybody who's spoken for their comments, most helpful. Please don't think we're not going to resource this and not going to enforce these bylaws, because we will. As I said right at the very beginning, flooding is a really important issue. It's something that's becoming more and more concerning, affecting more and more of our residents, and anything we can do using these bylaws to improve flood or mitigate flood risk and improve the flood situation, we will actually enforce. And the director has just confirmed that. So please don't think we're not going to enforce them. Somebody mentioned the issue of pollution. Pollution is an issue. I know it's a very live issue and a very public issue, particularly with discharge of sewage, etc. But even though we're responsible for watercourses, pollution remains a matter for the Environment Agency. I hear what's said about the discharge through, or the watercourses running through the east of Northampton into Billing Aquadrome. It's important, yes, that we keep those flowing, and we will ensure that that is the case. But having visited Billing Aquadrome only a few weeks ago, the problem of the flooding at Billing Aquadrome doesn't come from the watercourse that flows through Keith's Ward into the aquadrome. It's the main navigation of the river that is the main problem down there. So as I say, the brook that runs through from Keith's area into the aquadrome isn't the problem, but it's important that we keep all watercourses flowing and well maintained. Enforcement, all I can say is, yes, we will use the bylaws and we will enforce. That's why we're applying for them. It would be silly to, as Councillor Randall says, to apply for them and do nothing. We wouldn't apply for them if we were intending to do nothing. So, we are going to use them to best advantage for the people of West Northamptonshire. Emma talked about the flood team. We've had great difficulty in recruiting to the flood team, but it is very much getting there, and it is nearly there. I think we've got 2 posts now that remain to be recruited. It's a very specialist field, and the qualified people just aren't out there. So we've really got to look at how we are going to recruit these very specialist people. But as I say, we're down, I think, to two now. So we are actually getting there. I hear what is said about the issue in Asda. I mean, I've witnessed that. I've stood down there. I've watched it, and it is a problem. It is an ongoing issue. I know it's still being worked on. I know that officers are still considering options and what we can actually do down there. And it's not just that area of Far Cotton. There are other areas of Far Cotton that need attention as well. And it is constantly under review. And I know that there are projects and people are working on issues going on down there. With regard to the boats in the canal, they're the responsibility of the owner. If the owner can't be traced or whatever, I do remember, and I'm sure you'll remember, Mr. Chairman, when we, Northampton Borough Council, actually had to pay for the removal of one. So I think if you can't define an owner, then it may, I'm not saying it will, it may fall to this authority to remove it. That was the case 6-7 years ago. Things may have changed, I don't know, but yeah, if the owner can't be traced, it may fall to us. So anyway, Mr. Chairman, I think these bylaws are going to help. They are another tool in our box to help the flooding situation and to ensure that we do what we can for our residents. So I'm happy to move the recommendation at 3.1.
That's great. Thank you, Phil. Does anybody else have any other comments or queries on this? No. Okay. In which case then, I ask you to show your support. The recommendation at section 3, as Phil says, can I ask you to confirm and indicate your support, please, to the recommendations? Great. Thank you very much indeed. And that takes us on to item 8. This is consultation on the draft Parks Development Strategy. In a moment, we'll ask Phil to introduce it. We've a number of speakers then. First of all, we have Sally Keeble, then we have Councillors Harris, Purser, Holland-Ellermere, Roberts and Randall. So Phil, over to you on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I knew Sally was here to talk on something, but you told me it was item 7, not item 8. So my apologies. Mr. Chairman, Parks Development Strategy. We as a council are proud owners of a great set of parks ranging from small to large, urban and country. And these are a vital asset for our communities, giving people pleasure, space to reflect and enjoy, restoring mind and body. They are also an important part of our tourist offer. Every great town needs green space, When we visit places, we enjoy nice buildings, but we also enjoy the parks of those towns. Providing good quality parks is one of the earliest missions of local government, going back deep into Victorian times. Our predecessor councils, and their predecessors in fact, created parks during the 19th and 20th centuries, and that work goes on. Mr. Chairman, our parks are great, but they can do even more. And there are parts of West Northamptonshire with limited provision. As development happens and the area grows, it becomes even more important to provide green space that people can access. We've therefore prepared a draft, and it's very much a draft park strategy. And this identifies overarching actions which apply to a number of parks, areas where new parks would be good and helpful, reflecting existing need, proposed housing growth, and in the case of the Battle of Naseby, an opportunity to enhance appreciation of our parks. It also identifies where we can improve existing parks. But if there are further suggestions, I hope that these will come out in the consultation. We recognise we cannot do everything ourselves, so the strategy includes strengthening arrangements to allow communities and businesses to be involved in improving our parks and creating new means for people to enjoy them. I should add that I'm particularly proud of our outdoor learning service and how this helps young people learn in ways the classroom is not best at. We are keen to see what more we can do to help young people, particularly those struggling with mental health issues, learn well. Mr. Chairman, because the parks are so important to people, we think it is right to consult on the draft strategy before proceeding to adoption. There will be perspectives and ideas from our own communities which can add and shape the strategy. We encourage everyone with an interest in the parks, present or future, to respond to this consultation. In closing, Chairman, I note how well this report links to the next item on the agenda, given the way parks contribute to public health. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you, Phil. Let's move on to speakers. We'll bring first of all Sally Keeble. Welcome, Sally. Get the microphone down to you.
Thank you very much. I'm really delighted to be able to come here and speak about, I'm going to speak about Swan Haven Park, and also from the perspective of, I was a former chair of the Urban Green Spaces Task Force, so the policy around public parks and urban parks and open spaces has always been one that's very dear to my heart. Now, Swan Haven Park meets a lot of the criteria for the best possible urban space design. It tackles disadvantage. It provides for levelling up for one of the country's most left behind communities in the Eastern District. It provides access for a wide range of people. It has good tarmac paths so that women with buggies, people in wheelchairs and children with bikes and things can get around easily. It provides for diversity of habitats and different wildlife. It also provides for climate change because that park is a surface water drainage system for the estates in the Eastern District and will also cater for the new housing that's going on up at Overston and at Moulton. So the things that Councillor Larritt was talking about, it is absolutely central to. Despite that, it's only got 2 references in the whole of this report. One is in page 93, and there are some inaccuracies there. It says that the park is too close to busy roads. Well, it is an urban park. It's a brilliant example of how you can incorporate an urban green space into a housing estate and provide a variety of habitats and provide access for people. It also says there's a problem with the siting of the lakes and there's an issue about engineering works. Well, the lakes and the stream have always been there for generations. They're even more important now because of the increased pressure that's coming on the watercourses. It was talked about in item 7. So it's particularly important. The engineering works, I think what that refers to is some reeds that were planted to try to get the water to go down between some reed beds. The reed beds weren't managed properly, so the water has gone all over the place, and the environment in one of the lakes has degraded so badly that it's going to take a very large amount of capital to get it back to rights again. And that's quite an urgent requirement. Now, the other reference is on page 107, and this is the one which is particularly galling and which I think is a real insult to people who live in the Eastern District of Northampton and who have campaigned for these lakes and for the park, because it was a community that campaigned to have it called Swanhaven Park. They've been campaigning on it for years because it says that a feasibility study on the East Northampton Park, which includes Swanhaven Lakes, nobody actually quite recognises East Northampton Parks. People do know Swanhaven Lakes because the name was chosen by the community. That the feasibility work will only happen in 2029 and any work would only start in 2031. Now that's 2 council election cycles away, and that is basically kicking it off into the never never. And that is really problematic for a park which used to be an absolute jewel in the crown of Northampton and which has deteriorated very badly over recent years. So I would suggest that if this is going out for consultation, it would be really good if those factual misrepresentations, let's call them, factual inaccuracies were corrected so that it didn't misrepresent Swanhaven Park. I mean, I walk around there regularly, and it's not so busy, so close to busy roads that you can't get away from nature. It's a lovely place that I can walk to from my home. And also that those delivery dates are brought forward because the improvements that are needed to cope also with the pressure on the water systems, those are urgently needed. People have been crying out for improvements to that lakes for many years, that part for many years. And I would hope that when it goes out, it would have an earlier delivery date than 2031. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sally. Right, now on to our councillor, Small Councillor Harris. Jonathan, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be a little partisan myself. Pleased to see the Battle of Naseby Country Park proposals in there. I think that's an excellent idea. I know this obviously going out to consultation, but my first question is, do the parishes know any of the local parishes yet? Are they aware? You don't need to answer it now, but I'd just be useful for us to know as ward councillors if they've had any forward warning of this at all in this documentation. I guess the main one I'm going to talk about, you will have heard me talk about the Brampton Valleyway before, no doubt. And again, we have in here the old issue of tentative proposals to reinstate a railway line. I really do think we need to get some clarity on this. As part of the Planning Policy Committee, there was lots of conversations about the policy in the transport section for this and the potential exploration of its reopening. And still not really been answered as to what the driver and what the motivation is behind that. And I think that's really important. If it is a serious piece of work, what's it for? Who's driving it? What's it intended to do? If it's simply connecting 2 lines together, there are other options which don't seem to get any reference in any other direction. And the reason why I flag it within this is because in the local plan, which is now out for consultation, in 1216.1, it refers to the Brampton Valleyway as a sub-regional green infrastructure corridor. That's pretty important in the grand scheme of things from a management point of view. And although there are some plans outlined in this document for the Brampton Valleyway, they feel a little secondary. They feel a little bit like it will keep that on hold just in case this railway thing ever comes along. And my concern is that it may or may not, because we don't really know where it is, how far away it is or how near it is, that we'll end up in a situation where it gets neglected or left behind effectively. Most people refer to it as a linear park already. We've referred to it as a linear park in the past. So I'm just asking for some clarity around it because I think we need to get some clarity on the status of Brampton Valley Way and sooner rather than later. One specific thing linked to that issue is the team there I know have been very keen to do work on signage and have done some work around exploring capital investment on that. I really think it would be good to see signage improvement in the document itself, because I think that's a very simple, specific thing at not that big a cost. It could make a huge improvement quite quickly. A couple of other quick comments relating to Britsworth Country Park specifically. We're very keen to get people coming there. I heard today the conversation about the sport and active travel activity, which was very good. But in this report, it talks about building a bigger car park. That seemed to me at odds slightly. If we're trying to get people to be active, then surely we should be encouraging them to come to the country park by other means rather than simply growing the car park. Pleased to see the reference in there for the open water swimming that's now taking place. And that is growing, and I'm sure will continue to grow. So it's good to see that there's some recognition of that. And the final couple of points. There's quite a lot of discussion about play equipment generally. I think it would be good to have a bigger focus on adult exercise equipment as well. And I know that's something that the team there have talked about in the past, but never managed to secure funds for. And then finally, it does talk about community and friends of groups. There's some very good friends of groups in action. And I think it'd be good to see more focus around community planting schemes or something of that nature to build on the local nature recovery strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Your comments, Councillor Purser. Bob, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome the strategy and very strongly support the idea it should go out for consultation. I'm a friend of Abington Park, and we have a local park management committee, which is really a local liaison group. I think it's misnamed, but we have a huge range of activities going on, some of them involving council agencies, ID Verdi, Veolia and WNC. But others are based on voluntary activity, the litter pickers, the fishing group who actually keep the lake clean from rubbish, the voluntary gardeners. We also have a fair from time to time. That causes tensions in the park because it damages the sports pitches and also interrupts the church services that are going on at the same time. So there's a continuing need for very careful planning, liaison, negotiation between the different activities that are going on in our green spaces. So it's really important that this strategy is consulted with all these various interest groups who are involved, and that we make sure that all those interests are represented in the strategy as we develop it. It's also important to have a strategy because certainly in Abington Park, we need new toilets and we need them in the right place and in a timely way. We need better sports facilities. So there's a lot of planning that needs to go on, and it needs to be within the context of a strategy so that we know where the sources of funding are going on. So I really support this strategy. Really, as with others, Naseby Park, its heritage, it's an important part of our nation's democratic process. I hope that as a council, we can play a part in getting an initiative going so that this important part of our history is brought forward. There have been a number of attempts that have gone into the sand. I think now that with WNC, we could probably make it happen. So I would urge that to be part of the strategy. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. I agree with your comments on Naseby. And Councillor Holland-Elliott, Keith, over to you.
I welcome the idea of designating Swan Haven Park as an official sort of park. Please do get the geography right. I mean, I saw a reference 6.3.6 on page 107. The reference to Billing Lakes does confuse a lot of people. There was another housing association who named one part of my community as Billing, but it's not actually Billing. And I have to say that locals don't like it when you get the geography wrong. It has happened with this council on a number of occasions, like Oak Tree Rise on Thorpelands, not Billing. That came up before. So I just need to make sure you're acutely aware and accurate about your geography in the east. Again, as has been referenced by Sally Keeble, there are major concerns about the ongoing neglect of those parks, that area. Having seen the local charity through the lottery fund invest quite a significant amount of money in maintaining and improving the area, to then see it fall apart is not good. So I also share a concern about the timescales. I mean, 2029 with a possible 2031 is quite a significant time to wait for something. I recognise it's probably to do with resourcing, but that is quite a significant delay when some of the problems we've got need tackling within the next couple of years, not within the next decade. And of course, we've also got other green spaces around the area which aren't designated in this report, which are neglected. I've already mentioned one of them, Ecton Brook Linear Park and Retchford Farm Pocket Park, where we've got problems with, again, with maintenance, and the fact we've got other smaller parks where we really urgently need investment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Keith. Councillor Roberts, Emma, over to you.
I'm not sure I'm going to get everything I want to say on this in 3 minutes, so bear with. I disagree with 7.3.1 of the report, as I don't believe this strategy at all sets an ambitious strategic direction. To produce the strategy prior to any public consultation and engagement with any of the groups listed at 7.4.2 is, in my view, a mistake. And some of that consultation early could have got rid of some of the comments that have been made by colleagues this evening. There's no sense of community inclusion in this draft at all. It's missing public health and wellbeing factors, so it doesn't support the next item on the agenda in the slightest. It's got no social cohesion. We've got to move away from seeing consultation as a tick box exercise, and we've got to take basic consultation into real co-production, which was demonstrated in the earlier item. The climate and community impact statements don't address the real issues, and there's no reference to poverty impacts once again, yet we know open spaces and access to them has a real impact on those in the most deprived areas. And I'm really shocked to see at 6.4 a suggestion that nothing has been identified at the moment that would materially add to the proposals in the draft. Yet there's no real reference in the strategy to improving access to green spaces, no real consideration of how we improve access in the urban areas. Although we touch on the town centre being important, there's no mapping exercise, there's no strategy on how we might deal with unused or uninviting open spaces within the town centre, and link them with our more traditional parks. There's no alignments in the strategy to the Move Northamptonshire Active Environments Framework, not referenced at all. There's no reference to the green infrastructure networks. There's no reference to public health documents on improving access to green spaces. And there's absolutely nothing in relation to the tree policy or any other such council strategy. And where planning is an issue, we just say planning processes will deal with this. That's not good enough. The lack of focus on our smaller park areas and parks within residential developments doesn't show ambition, because they continue to go unnoticed, unused, unloved, and often not even being included in our maintenance contracts, which a number of the really small park areas that we've set up in my ward have been missed off the Veolia contract. They're not having graffiti cleaned, they're not being maintained, they're not being repaired. There are only 2 lines on inclusion for those with SEND, and there's only a couple of throwaway lines on accessibility. The University of Northampton conducted interviews in Northampton's Park, speaking to close to 60 people about what value the spaces provide to their health and well-being. How have those findings been reflected in this draft strategy? Have we even spoken to the university about those findings? I know the data was sent to us, a number of people in the authority, but we've not referenced, there's not a single person in the strategy. There's no talk about people or the impact that the strategy has on them. And the photographs are, you can't even really identify in some instances where they are. The strategy's got an 84-point action plan, an 84-point plan. The strategy's lifespan isn't clear, and others have referenced 2029, 2031, but there's no strategy as to how we'll deliver that action plan because there's no link to any vision. The Urban Green Spaces brief from the World Health Organization gives some great practical tips and guidance on how to do this and how to approach urban green space planning, but this isn't referenced at all in the document either. Then I look at the action plan and I see item 72 and item B at 6.4.7 on page 30 of the report that will work with DAPT to enhance parking at Delapre Park, ideally at Ransom Road. Now, by accident, I found out on Thursday that we're in talks with Homes England about the area of land on Ransom Road by accident. Immediately, as soon as I was notified, I requested a full briefing on what was going to happen. Haven't had that briefing, but then I see this chucked away as a line in the report that we're ideally looking at doing some Delapre Abbey parking on Ransom Road, where residents are already crying out for more spaces, but we're going to allocate it to the Abbey itself. Now, I love the Abbey. I support lots of what they do, but using that piece of land to support parking there just doesn't make any sense. You can't chuck that line in a strategy and hope no one will notice it. When it goes to consultation, councillors haven't even been notified. Nobody's been told about this as an option, and there's no detail. I'm going to ask Cabinet to amend the recommendation, and I have no power in this room. You know I don't. So I am genuinely pleading with you to amend this recommendation, that we revise the draft strategy before it goes out to formal public consultation, and we engage with those that are referenced in there now, particularly the University Strategies Department, who's looked at these questionnaires. We look at the policy frameworks, and then we do real co-production consultation, because there's a massive opportunity here with this strategy that we are going to lose. Have a look at Manchester City Council's draft strategy from a number of years ago. It says this is about our people. This says this is rushed, hurried, and has got no detail at all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Emma. Our last speaker then is Councillor Randall. Wendy.
Thank you. Wow, Emma, I don't think I can follow you. But I would listen to what she says, because boy, did she make a lot of good points there. I was disappointed that I would have expected more people to be consulted on in this. And like Councillor Roberts has touched on, you know, we keep doing these. We come up with all these drafts without actually speaking to the people or the users, or we seem to anyway. You know, my disappointment in some of these is the fact that, you know, some are charged for parking and some aren't. You know, I've really got a concern about, you know, I'll go back to how the price of, you know, Daventry Country Park was increased significantly. And I walked down there the other evening. I won't park in there now. I used to, but I won't now because I'm not paying those charges. So I'll just walk down. But the park was nearly empty. And it was one of our first warmest days of the year, where normally that park would have been heaving. And I really would like to know whether those parking charges have had an increase, you know, because it's really worrying to me. I don't know if it's made a difference in Brixworth, but I definitely would say it has made a difference to Daventry Country Park. I'm on the town council. I did ask if they've been consulted at all, but No, they didn't. And there are some good proposals in here for Daventry Country Park, but I don't know whether that's going to be fee paying. And, you know, we have got quite a lot of deprivation within the town. And if it's going to be some sort of, you know, high ropes and swings that we're going to have to pay £20 a time for, then, you know, a lot of those children are just going to be looking on. You know, that is a concern as well. So, thank you.
Thank you. Phil, did you want to, that was our last speaker, did you want to pick up some comments from there? Come back on a few things? Yes, certainly. Do you want to come in first then? Yeah, gladly. Yeah, let's have 2 or 3 speakers. I think Adam wants to too. Let's do that next, then we'll come back to you to sum up, Phil, perhaps.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on Phil's last point and the reference in the strategy to the integrated health system and obviously the health benefits of our parks and open spaces, and particularly around the link to deprivation and health inequalities and the accessibility to parks. And I think there is more we can do, and it does reference in the action plan about using the LAPs to identify the assets and what work we can do. And I think there's been some relevant points been raised by some points been raised by opposition colleagues tonight that I guess can feed into the consultation. But I think we are lucky in certainly in Northampton and in Daventry with you know, the green assets that we've got, and I think we can make quite a bit more out of them in terms of health accessibility, so and equality. So I think that's a challenge we can take away from public health side and feed into, as you've got on the action point there, into the LAPs to make more of those assets for the people that need them in some of those more challenged areas. I just wanted to put that forward. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Thank you very much. Let's go to Fiona next, if you wouldn't mind passing down the
Sorry.
microphone.
I just was going to say, obviously, that Brackley will be pleased at last to have got on the map of West Northamptonshire District Council. And I do hope it's not a vain hope, you know, in the future that we might consider going down that way to see what they're up to. I was a bit concerned about the council will conduct a feasibility study to establish the likely level of demand for a country park. I think that goes without saying that most people would like a country park, and with some access for people to cycle, little people, I mean, not. It would be amazing to have that in Brackley, and I think that would be something that you could actually do. We haven't got a country park. We would very much like one. Thank you.
Jolly good. And if we perhaps pass the microphone up to Adam. Oh, sorry, you use this one.
Yeah, I'd just like to voice my support for the Battle of Naseby Country Park. It's something that I've raised for a number of years now, and given the significance of the Battle of Naseby is, if not the most important battle in English history, then certainly in the top 2. It's vital that we make the most of that historic legacy that we have in this county, and it's not confined to Naseby alone. It stretches down into my own ward and in Kislandbury, where we still have the Cromwell Cottage pub, named for of course Oliver Cromwell, who stayed in the village prior to the battle. So it's a rich seam of history that we have in Northamptonshire that we need to make the most of. I'd also just echo a comment made by Councillor Purser regarding the toilet block facilities at Abington Park. I recall that we approved the steps to construct a toilet block and changing them at Abington Park some time ago at Cabinet, and doesn't seem to progress much further. So hopefully we can add a bit of impetus to that and get decent facilities for both male and female users of the park and sports players at the venue.
Great, thank you, Adam. A few further points there. Phil, shall I hand back to you at that point?
Thank you, Chair. Where does one start? Can I thank Matt first of all for his comments? And yes, it's important that we have the public health input, and we work together to do what's best in the interests of the public health of our residents. So I totally support that. Fiona, Brackley, yes, we know when we looked at them, when we first at the outset of this, we looked at the map of West Northamptonshire, and there's a glaring lack of lack of facility in the south of the area, particularly in the vicinity of Brackley. So yeah, it's a key area crying out for some sort of facility. You seem to have a little bit of woodland down there, but you really need something more substantial than what's there at the moment. Adam, yeah, 400 years is a long time in coming, but we'll try and get there. But no, it is a site that we should celebrate, and there's opportunities there to develop Parkland and develop facilities as well. So all for that. I hear what's been said about the parks on the Eastern District, and you know, we do want to get them up, and all our parks we want to invest in, and we want to see them become green flag venues as well. I mean, that's a standard that is set nationally for quality parks, and the more we can get, the better. I think you know, I wasn't aware of the problems with the reed bed that you've mentioned, but perhaps if you'd like to let us know a few more details on that, we'll look into the problems that that's creating and what may need to be done to address that. But, you know, please feed into the consultation. I hear what's said about how we've scheduled this and the timescales involved. I appreciate that some of them are quite long, but if there's valid reasons to rejig them, please refer back into the consultation, and we'll take that into account. Jonathan referred to the issue of parishes. We have to start somewhere, and this is the very first draft that's being released. Parishes will be informed that we're going out to consultation. There will be a consultation, and that will go out hopefully in the next, at least in the next issue of the newsletter to our parish council. So we will publicise it, but they haven't been involved from at the moment. This is very much the first draft that's going to consultation. With regard to the railway line, that's a matter we'll have to pursue. It does keep featuring in various transport documents. DFT still have an interest in it, and it's coming out as in certain documents produced by regional transport bodies as well. So it's not gone away, it is still there, but I fully appreciate how it relates to the Brampton Valley Way, and we need to look at that. I'm pleased that work on signage is being done. I know our wardens are looking at that and are looking to develop that even further. Brixworth Country Park, a bigger car park. I'm not necessarily in favour of a bigger car park, but I do like our parks to be accessible to everybody, and I wouldn't want not to develop a car park and then create a safety hazard out on the highway. So it's a question of balance, I think, on that one. Adult exercise, totally agree. I mean, go to my ward and look what Wootton Parish Council have provided. Absolutely superb. And we've already got some good stuff in Abington Park in Northampton and other parks in Northampton, and community engagement and involvement, whether that's planting or whatever, is really good. And it's important that we work with all the others, like the Friends group and such as in Abington Park, and you know, the groups that are part of that, the fishermen. As Bob knows, I've been to one of those meetings, and it's important that we do engage with those, and they all have their share, have their say in this strategy. And having the strategy will actually enable us or put us in a better place to support bids for funding for our parks. Keith mentioned geography and neglect, etc. Please, if there's any glaring the geography issue, if you could just drop us an email on that, we'll correct any errors, most definitely. And as I've already said, dates come back in the consultation. I'm sorry, Emma, if you didn't like it, but it's the very first draft. It will be consulted on. We will make sure the university are consulted and they can have their input. and I look forward to Councillor Roberts's input into the consultation. As I say, it is a draft. It is for consultation. We will listen carefully to what our residents have to say, whether it be on a particular park or a particular aspect of the strategy or a particular provision or the timeline for delivery. We'll take everything seriously and come back with a strategy that, as far as practically possible, takes into account all the considerations and submissions we receive. We'll do our best, Chair. Happy to propose the recommendation.
Great, thank you. Any further queries or comments at all on this at all? Okay, so we're out for consultation. We've already got some good points, I think, to incorporate this evening, haven't we? So we're out to consultation. I think we've already got some good ideas to incorporate from this evening, haven't we? Meantime, the recommendation is at section 3. Can I just ask the Cabinet to confirm their agreement to that recommendation, please? Agreed? Agreed, thank you. Takes us on to our next and last paper for this evening. This is the Director of Public Health report. This is with Matt, and Sally is also going to introduce the Director of Public Health. We'll introduce it too. We then have three speakers, which is Councillor Rosie Humphreys, Bob Purser and Wendy Randall. So Matt and Sally, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this is the statutory Director of Public Health annual report 2023, because it obviously looks back at the work that's been going on. And as Sally, the Director of Public Health, is sitting next to me, I think it's best place that Sally introduces a report, and I'll make a couple of comments afterwards, if that's okay.
Great,
thank you.
Of course. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. So, as Director of Public Health, I am required to do an independent report every year. So it's here at Cabinet tonight to seek your support. And the theme of the report cuts across all portfolios. The opportunity to do this report gives me the chance to shine a spotlight on something that affects the overall health and wellbeing of our residents. And it also gives me a chance to put a challenge out to our health and wellbeing system. There's a hard copy of the report, and there is also a video version. And ultimately, when these are finished, they will be loaded up onto our website. The video version is much more light touch, and we've got some really good case studies in there and things. So the theme of this year's report for 2023 is taking a place-based approach to tackling health inequalities. It builds on the theme from last year, which was about our local area partnerships, but it really brings the focus of this working in a community to tackling health inequalities. In the document, we flag the factors that contribute to health inequalities. So things like lack of a suitable home, lack of suitable employment, quality of the environment linked to our previous discussion, the previous paper, the impact of different socioeconomic groups, different geographical areas, deprived areas, and also those with protected characteristics and vulnerable groups such as those who are homeless or rough sleepers. The previous document we've considered tonight, the carer strategy, is a really good example of a community that have protected characteristics and see health inequalities, and the work that we're trying to do to focus on improving those. So the document refers to the Northamptonshire Health Inequalities Plan, which was done in 2021. And that is a document that is needed to be refreshed. So we will do that as part of the recommendations. So there's lots of facts and figures in there about the health inequalities that we see in West Northamptonshire. And just to reassure you, as a team, we are working on further joint strategic needs assessment products. So really trying to drill down into some of our communities, and there's examples of those. So Councillor Brown's area recently done the rough sleeping needs assessment. We're working on the Gypsy Roma traveller needs assessment at the moment. So, developing our understanding of our different communities. In the document, we have our route map around the authority, which shows as a bus ride around the authority, but it flags the difference between life expectancy and healthy life expectancy. When you look at that, it's quite stark. You can see a difference just within a few miles of life expectancy and healthy life expectancy. And that is what we're trying to change, basically. In the document, we also refer to the Well Northants programme, which is led by the communities team in Councillor Smith's area. So that is our asset-based community development programme. That team work with lots of different communities to mobilise assets and to co-produce different solutions. And there's some really good examples in the document. The report refers to a number of case studies where we as an authority and as a system are trying to bring that focus. So I've got just a few here, but there are more in the report and in the video. So the SEND strategy recently led from Councillor Baker's portfolio is a great example of co-production. Our work with the LGBTQ community and the Allies Forum, the suicide prevention work, again, the work led from Councillor Brown's area with Rough Sleepers. And then in Northampton Central, we've got the Targeted Respiratory Project, which cuts across lots of different portfolios, to name but a few. So these are examples of us providing communities with the methods to drive positive change to health and wellbeing. Other vehicles that we use are things like the Community Grants Programme, our Welcoming Spaces, and the endless number of volunteers and peer roles that we've got. So I'm trying to give, this is a real cross-authority approach. This is ongoing work. There is loads more to do in this area. In the recommendations that I've said is that we first of all need to do an awful lot more to understand the inequalities. We need to refresh that health inequalities plan that I mentioned. And we also need to really put a challenge out to our wider health and wellbeing system partners to use all the tools and all the information available to us to understand the impact of services and provision and things like that. So that's the challenge going out. And we talked at the Health and Wellbeing Board about that last time. There is a communications and publicity planned around the report over the summer. And my intention is to go around all the different partner boards as well and just, talk about the report. And we've also got a conference with the voluntary sector at the beginning of May. So that's all I wanted to say. I'm really happy to answer any questions. I don't know if you'd like to say more.
Yeah, thank you, Sally. And thank you, Chair. I think it's a really good report. And when I first met Sally, taking up this portfolio, Sally was new to the role. We talked about the challenge of making the council a public health council. And Sally's mentioned and referenced nearly all of our portfolios sitting around the table here, and the public health team cuts into loads of areas of really, really important work. You mentioned housing, the SEND group, we've talked about it with the parks and open spaces. So I think we're achieving that end, and I'm really proud of some of the work that goes on within the portfolio. We talked about the anti-poverty strategy, for example, and the team have been shortlisted for an MJ award for a whole team approach to tackling health inequalities. So things are being noticed, and that's down to the brilliant work. And I find out more and more about it, whether it's things like suicide prevention, drug and alcohol work. There's some amazing work that goes on within public health that we don't often get to talk about. And I'm really proud also with the work that we're doing with the LAPS. I know this members come to me if they see there's some challenges in the LAPS, but the way that's working, and we've got our partners working with them to get really stuck into the health inequalities in our communities. It's really positive. And we were at Sally and I were at a session at the university today with loads of partners talking about how we can all use our assets better to help with aging, which is a huge challenge we know in adult social care. So there's loads of really good work going on, and I commend the report and look forward to another year of good quality, solid work. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you both. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to our speakers, first of which is Councillor Humphreys. Rosie.
Thank you very much for this highly informative report. As our Director of Public Health says, health inequalities remain a big concern, and there's so much to do to address the needs of our residents across such a diverse area. The case for shifting to a more community-centred approach to health and well-being is compelling if all groups have an opportunity to participate. As to the population inequalities highlights, it's shocking to read that of the increase of fatal and serious injuries, fatalities and serious injuries on our roads between 2022 and 2021, 215 in 2021 and 287 in 2022. More cycle paths in our towns and along our treacherous rural roads should not only help reduce traffic volume and also these horrifying numbers, but might also improve the numbers of overweight or obese in our population, just short of 70%, which is significantly worse than the average in England. How exactly are we encouraging our residents to move more on a daily basis, in addition to the proposals in the Parks and Development Strategy we've heard about today? I've been reading information about Active Blaby in Leicestershire. They have fantastic public health messaging and a programme of activities addressing the main barriers to being active, which negatively impact our health. I do recommend a look at that. The case studies are a real showcase as to what's been achieved, and I look forward to seeing them communicated in the video. It was especially illuminating to read of the volunteer and peer roles, community members using their life experiences and social connections to reach out to others. I'm sure members would be interested in helping identify individuals in their localities who could become models of peer support, be community navigators, etc., to help address the health inequalities within their LAPs. This would also enable the work of LAPs to be better understood, because from conversations I have with residents, most have little understanding of what they do at present. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosie. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Purser, Bob, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. There are some stark figures in this report. The one that stands out to me is the graphic showing that a woman in Brackley will live for 86 years and one in Castle Ward will live 7 years less, 80 years. But the male figures are shocking. There we have a figure for where in Brackley it's 87 and Castle Ward it's a full 14 years less of life than in our more affluent areas. I think these are shocking figures, and my concern is that is the data for older people. What about the quality of life of our younger people? And we know from data that the income of families, primarily because of the cuts in child tax credits, families have lost an income of between £3,000 and £4,000 a year. Now, that's not within the remit of this council to deal with, but is the context in which we're working, that families have lost income and that poverty is a driver of ill health. My other concern is, and Councillor Brown will not be surprised if I say, housing is a determinant of health. And we have more people in temporary accommodation, more people in stressed accommodation. And that's a real concern in this area. And I don't see that what we're delivering is producing anything like the change that will have an impact on health. That's my concern, and that's affecting our particularly young families and the health and opportunity of our young people and their futures. So I think we're in a very stark context here in terms of improving the public health of our communities. I think there are a couple of other factors I'd just like to say. I really welcome the way this authority has brought public health kind of into the mainstream and links in with the departments. I think that's really, really good practice, and the whole LAP initiative is really good. Now I've lost my point. Yeah, I'm concerned that mainstream health, because of the budget pressures they're under, they're kind of drifting out of the preventive work that mainstream health has to contribute in terms of, yes, tertiary prevention, but also secondary and primary. They could be a huge resource to us, but they're under such pressure at the moment that I think we're losing that opportunity to bring them into our preventive work. I suppose I'm also hope that as a nation, from the pandemic, we've learnt the real contribution that public health at a local level can make to improving health. National government completely lost the plot over this. I hope we locally have really seen the benefit of the skills and approaches that public health can make to producing a really good, healthy community in West Northamptonshire. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you for all those points. And finally, Councillor Randall. Wendy.
Thank you. It is really depressing, actually, reading a lot of these figures. At a town council meeting last week, we had the CEO of Citizens Advice and was saying for the first time ever that they are having the 60 to 80-year-olds coming in, telling them that they haven't got enough money to buy food or heat their homes, and their health is deteriorating rapidly. I spoke to one of our local paramedics this week, and he said that they are seeing an increase in heart-related issues being the result of the periodontal gum disease, where people can't access an NHS dentist. So that is considerably, it's going to, that is going to get a whole lot worse. Only this week, a friend's daughter needed to access a dentist. The dentist said they couldn't take her on and told her to go to A&E. And then I don't know if this figure is correct or not, but on page 12, it says about the percentage of children living in a relatively low income, and this number has increased by 42.1% compared with 2 years ago. That is absolutely, that is a real shocking figure. And I've got real concerns over what that's going to do with those children's health, because we know if they're on a relatively low income, then the food that they buy isn't going to be of the best quality. We all know that, food is expensive. We are seeing larders opening up in so many more villages now. We've got food banks opening up in more villages now. And it's going to just become a whole lot worse. The other concerns I've got is how many people are going to be pushed into temporary accommodation. Somebody asked me about rental this week, so I went into Daventry on the Right Move page, and I thought I'll put in a 3-bedroom property in Daventry for rental of £1,000, and there was 3 properties come up, and I pushed that up to nearly £1,500 before I found a dozen. And I'm thinking, like, people on a low income that can't get on the housing list are just bordering on that line, they're just not going to afford to live. And it is really, really stark. So I'm really, really concerned with these figures. And, you know, I can just see things getting a whole lot worse. I don't know what we're going to be able to do to fix that, apart from a change in government. But, you know, these are real stark figures. But, you know, thank you for the report.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, and I'm sure the figures are right. We'll go back to Sally and to Matt, and just also to echo a point Bob made. Actually, I think it's absolutely right. We see such an impact in public health throughout the whole organisation, and that's really great, isn't it? Really great. Do you want to pick up, perhaps Sally and Matt, maybe some of the points that were made? Thank you.
Okay, so if I can just first of all thank Councillor Golby for his kind words, but from my point of view, everything that the council does is public health. You know, the reason public health came back into local government 10 years ago now is because everything that we all do can affect these health inequalities. So the trick is understanding what they are and, you know, being brave enough and being able to point resources in different ways to target those inequalities. So it isn't about the public health team, it's about what we all do and what the system does, basically. I'll try. There was an awful lot in those points, but just for Councillor Humphrey's point, particularly about activity. So in the health and wellbeing strategy, we've highlighted that one of the indicators that we're really trying to work on is the number of residents who are active, and then within that understanding, you know, which groups, because we've got very different levels of activities when you look at different groups. So at scrutiny last night, the Jane's team brought the activity strategy, and you know, and what that is doing is looking at activity across lots of different communities. So in the elderly, in young people, on an area basis, communities of interest. So it's working with Northamptonshire Sport, but really bringing forward a plan to help us to get our residents more active to deal with that challenge. And it's not just about the traditional sport, it's much wider than that as well. So, you know, that work is going on and is fantastic, and will help us with that. Just to Councillor Purser's point, you know, the difference we see in life expectancy is, I agree, is shocking. And, you know, when you dig beneath the detail, it's down to a number of different things. So, you know, I talked about housing, employment, opportunities, environment. So the trick is understanding that, and also, again, thinking as a system, how can we target, how can we help, what can we do to try and deal with some of those inequalities? And dealing with that is a long game. You know, in a lot of these areas, we're not going to get quick fixes as well. So it's, you know, thinking about how can we deal with that as a long game. Councillor Randall's point about, you know, children particularly, and the children in poverty, picking the figure from the report. So a lot of that is down to the changing cost of living. So, you know, the cost of food, cost of fuel, which has pushed more families into, you know, into struggles. But again, it's understanding that, trying to target those families and work with those families, and also really trying to major on prevention. So, you know, we've got a whole new agenda of focus on young people, young families and prevention coming forward. And it's all about understanding those challenges, the differences, differentials, and working on that. But yes, it is, you know, some of those figures are quite stark, but, you know, this is the reason for the report. It's to put that out there and really call the whole system to account on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sally. Matt, you add something on that?
Yeah, thank you. And I think Bob's point around the stark figures, as Sally just said, is they are very stark, aren't they? And we need to reflect on the makeup and the economy and what makes our area of West Northampton. We do have some affluent areas, and we've got the inner city areas of Northampton and Daventry, and the impact of poverty and deprivation. But I do think, as a council, we've made some good inroads into not necessarily just fixing them, but trying to help those people. And as Sally said, to understand the drivers behind them. And we've got some very granular details around what those drivers are and the understanding of them, whether it's, you know, the Central Northampton lab, the prevalence of COPD and the impact that has on the local population. And indeed, if we can, and we've made the point before, if we can make an impact on issues like that, it will actually unlock other benefits for the rest of the population around the patch. So I think we know what the issues are. We've got a good understanding of them. We will do our best, but we can't guarantee we're gonna fix them. But we're working hard around that, and the public health team are totally dedicated to doing that in a myriad of different areas of work. So I think yeah, we've got plenty of challenges moving ahead, but we're in a good place to understand what they are and do our best to try and tackle them. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Adam, you're going to come in?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to pay tribute to Sally Burns and her team for the work that they've done in my area. Sally's mentioned already the Active Lives strategy that went to scrutiny and overview and scrutiny last night. And I think that's a really exciting piece of work that will cover a multitude of areas where we can really drive forward improvements in people's lives, not just within organised sport, but in everyday lifestyle habits. Also on the homelessness, rough sleeping side of things, an absolutely fundamental part of the co-production was having public health in the room, informing our approach and making sure that we had a really coherent strategy to put in front of Cabinet. And I think it's testament to being here as a unitary authority, as we are now. Previously, public health would have been in its little silo in the county council, whilst housing and leisure would have been spread amongst various different district and borough councils. And by coming together as a unitary, we're seeing the benefit of having that ability of public health to spread its tentacles into all of those different policy areas to great benefit to the public. So thank you to Sally and her team, and for Matt for his support as well.
Jolly good. Thanks, Adam. Thank you for those comments. Anybody, anything to add at all, or any questions? No? Okay. In which case, the recommendations for us to note this report and so on are at section 3. Can I just ask you to indicate your agreement to those recommendations, please? Thank you very much. That was our last paper, so thank you to everybody for coming along and for the officers who brought forward the reports. Thank you.